The Keeleys came to them. This was the Goldmans' home where they were known, out, respected in their community.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it was the Goldmans who had to change in order to make the normal people, I'm putting quotes around the word normal, comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about, and so do we. We're sisters Tracie and Emily, collectively known as the Guy Girls. Every week, we take turns rewatching, researching, and reconsidering beloved media and sharing what we learn. Come overthink with us, and if you get value from the show, please consider supporting us. You can become a patron on Patreon or send us a one-time tip through Ko-fi. Both links are in the show notes. And thanks. I'm Tracie Guy Decker, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit, because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? Today, I'll be bringing my deep thoughts about the 1996 film The Birdcage to my sister, Emily Guy Birkin, and to you. Let's dive in. All right, what do you remember about The Birdcage?
I remember laughing until my stomach hurt. This came out during the period of time when I saw pretty much every movie that came out in the theater. So I don't recall it being something that I specifically was like, oh, I want to see that. It was part of like what I saw, but I absolutely loved it. Except that I really hated the son. Like they tried to redeem him at the end, but I hated what he was putting his parents through. Which I wonder if that was seen as more reasonable in 1996 by people who were older than me at the time. That the way he was forcing his two dads to deny themselves would have been considered acceptable, especially considering the fact that his fiance's family was so conservative. So I suspect that hasn't aged well in the past 28 years.
The man, that guy, that kid, Val, he is like the most, I don't know, evil villain of the 90s. I mean, in part because of just the banality of it.
Yeah.
I mean, just really like the movie monsters at the time, the virus. Like I read somebody who was like, the virus in 12 Monkeys looks at that and goes like, yeah, we got nothing on him.
I also wasn't a huge fan of the fiance because she's lying about their name, saying it's Coleman instead of Goldman because, you know, it's not okay that they're Jewish. But with her, she was managing her own family, and not that made it okay, but she wasn't denying them. So I remember that. And then the other thing that I associate with this film is at the end when they're all in drag, they play We Are Family. I got all my sisters with me. And when our cousin had his bar mitzvah, I don't remember exactly when, the music cue to come on for you and me to say something was that song. So I associate that song with you in this movie and our cousin's bar mitzvah.
I have no recollection of that whatsoever.
It was funny because it was one of those things where like they had that because we're sisters and that's how everyone, like we're a unit in our family. Yeah. Which at times I bristled against, but that I was like, I'll allow it because I like this song.
Woo.
So tell me, why are we talking about The Birdcage today?
So it's funny how these things happen. Like there was a mention of the movie in like one of my social media feeds within the past, I don't know, month, maybe two. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that movie. And so I went back and rewatched it, and it was really interesting to watch it now. It's almost 30 years later, and sort of see what has held up and what hasn't, and how far we've come in some ways around queer representation. And so I wanted to kind of take a look back at it as a result of having it, like, just been reminded of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, I found it very, very funny. And, you know, Robin Williams has a sort of a special place. I think we've talked about that before on the show. This movie doesn't particularly remind me of Dad, but Robin Williams in general does. And so anyway, it just was like a happy memory. And I was like, yeah, let's look the deep thoughts. So it's not much deeper than that.
Yeah.
But
there are a lot of quotes from this movie that just run through my head where, like, why don't you take the cross? It's the prop for martyrs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whew. Anyway.
All right. Well, there's some things there, like, for sure, Val, the son, we need to talk about. And so some of the things I want to talk about are, I want to make sure we put this film in context, because in 96, it was a big deal. And I want to talk about it as representation that wasn't about trauma. Because around the same time frame, we had either To Wong Fu with Love, Julie Newmar, which was sort of just caricature over the top, or Philadelphia, which is all about the trauma and the danger of being gay in America. And so this film kind of rejected both of those. And so I want to talk about that in context. I want to talk about this as like a really interesting meditation on the performance of gender, like in general, including masculinity. And I think I want to talk about Robin Williams and the fact that he really is sort of the straight man, not heterosexual, but in the comedic duo, which is an interesting role for him.
Yes.
And we need to talk about race a little bit. It's not a huge thing in this film, but it's there. And I think we need to talk about it a bit. And finally, the heteronormativity that is still at play. Yes. In this film about, you know, featuring gay protagonists. So those are some of the things that I want to talk about. And I'm sure that our conversation will go in other directions as well. We'll let it see what happens. But let me see if I can give a quick synopsis of the plot. And I think this will be pretty quick because there are a lot of details, but the actual action is relatively minimal. So the movie, we first meet Armand Goldman and his partner in both love and business, Albert. Armand, Robin Williams, owns the titular nightclub, the Birdcage, which is a drag show in Miami, in South Beach. And Albert is the star, aptly named Starina, of this drag show. And people line up, including Kennedy's, to come see Starina perform. So when we first meet them, Starina, Albert, Nathan Lane, is like having a fit because in addition to being a drag queen, she is a drama queen. And she won't go on. She's convinced that Armand is having an affair. And she's just over the top how she's not going to go on. And there's some very funny quips in there. Hank Azaria plays their houseboy, Agador. And like this a very funny moment, like where Albert talks about how he can't go on without his Pirin tablets. He needs a Pirin tablet. And Armand is like, Agador, what are you giving him? And he says, oh, it's just aspirin with the A and the S scraped off. Which is still like, oh man. Anyway, so we meet these two, and then the filmmakers lead us to believe that Armand is in fact having an affair, as he's like, once Albert is on stage as Starina, Armand like sneaks up the stairs to the apartment that's above the club and is prepping for a date, it seems. And then this young, handsome man comes in and they greet one another with a hug. And we think that this is, in fact, a date, but it turns out that this handsome young man is his son, Val home from college. We learn that Val wants to get married. He's looking for approval from his dad to a woman. He wants to get married to a woman.
Mhm.
He's looking for approval from his dad.
I just want to say the timing, because he starts telling, I remember Val starts telling his dad about it, and his dad is like gulping down wine.
Yeah.
And he's like, you don't approve, and he puts it down, and let me tell you why.
Yeah.
It's just the comedic timing of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sorry. It's just,
it's really good.
It's
really
delightful.
Good. So, and Armand has very good reasons. I mean, Val is only 20. But he clearly loves his kid. He stands for him. He's like, you're on your own with this one, kid. But then, you know, they go to give a handshake and they get pulled into a hug, and Val's like, you did good. I believed you. And he's like, really? Did you? Sweet. It's really sweet. Anyway, so then we meet the intended's family. Barbara, played by Callista Flockhart, is the daughter of conservative Senator Kevin Keeley, played by, what's that guy's name? Why am I blanking on his name?
It's not Gene Hackman, is it?
Yes, it's Gene Hackman. Thank you. Played by Gene Hackman, who thinks that the Pope is too controversial. He wants someone more like Pat Robertson. Is that the name? Anyway, he's super like caricature conservative of the 90s.
Not so much a caricature anymore.
Right. He is the co-founder with Senator Jackson of some ridiculous like order for morality or something. I don't remember the exact words. It doesn't really matter. Coalition for the Moral Order. And we see him on some ridiculous talk show that he refers to as the most intelligent thing on TV, where they're just like yelling over each other. So Barbara tells them that she wants to get married. As you say, she lies about their name. She lies about what Armand does and says that he's the cultural attaché to Greece. And they don't like it. She's only 18. Whatever. We get distracted. The next action is that this co-founder of the Coalition for Moral Order dies in bed with an underage Black prostitute.
Whoops.
So the press descends to ask for comments from Senator Keeley. Louise, the mom, Barbara's mom, played by Diane Wiest, decides, pushes for, encourages, I don't know, she is pulling some strings, that a marriage is exactly what is needed to sort of restore their image. So they decide to drive to South Beach from Ohio to meet Barbara's intended and his parents. Barbara has told them that Mrs. Coleman is a housewife. So Val tells his dad he has to interrupt a rehearsal, which is very funny. One of the most iconic scenes in the movie, where Robin Williams does this like sort of brief homage to various moments in dance history, naming the dancers and or choreographers, as he's trying to tell the dancer who's with Albert for this scene, like what to do. And so he does this whole list of people that he names, and then he says, but you keep it all inside. It's like iconic. It's an iconic scene. Anyway, Val is interrupting this rehearsal to tell his dad they're coming tomorrow, and Armand is like, that's fine, we have plenty of time. I need to get back to rehearsal. And then he says, no, they think that, you know, you're the cultural attaché to Greece, and they think that you're straight. And basically Val is a villain and asks his dad to go back in the closet and send Albert away.
That's the part that I really in part because poor Albert has already been cheated on, which is how Val came to be. I mean, 21 years ago.
I'm not sure that's true. That's interesting. That's not the way that I read it.
Okay.
Val exists because of a one-night stand between Armand and Catherine, whom we do meet. I didn't read it as that he was cheating on Albert when that happened, but that it happened before or around the time they got together. That's
gotcha.
The way I read it. I could be mistaken. I think that I'm remembering the whole thing. That could be a valid read because Catherine knows about Albert, but
which is why I always assumed. So.
Right, but I could also see that like maybe they got together while she was pregnant. You know, like there's like a full like 9 to 10 months between
the one night stand,
and the baby coming to be, and then we also don't know. Yeah, so
whether or not it was before they got together, that does give Albert reason to feel insecure.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he is like, this is before he could have adopted Val.
Yeah. No, they couldn't even get married.
Yeah, it's before he and Armand could have gotten married. And so like he already probably feels very strongly that he's the odd one out in this family. Yeah. And then to be told by his son.
It's awful. That's really it's really villainous. And initially Armand is like, no, I'm not doing this. You're not gonna, like, it's taken me 20 years to get here. And actually Williams does a great job, in my opinion, of sort of portraying the weight, the sadness, the grief, the insecurity of that moment of like, yeah, this is who I am. And it's taken me 20 years to feel comfortable with it. And I'm not going to let you, he doesn't say the words, push me back into the closet, but that's basically what Val's asking him to do. He relents because he loves Val. And Val also wants them to tone down the decor in the apartment. And they're looking around and realizing just how many erect penises are in the apartment. So they take all the stuff out, and like some of the dancers at the club, like the drag performers in the club, are like helping to like redecorate the apartment. And Val keeps saying, don't add, just subtract. Like, who put the Playboys in the bathroom? Like, and like one of the performers is like, that's what they read. Don't add, only subtract. Anyway, so there's so much. The apartment is just like it's just bare walls, because like all of their stuff. So then there's this, Albert does not obviously want to be sent away. As you say, it's like, it's very upsetting to him. And so Armand is like, screw it, you can stay, but let's see if we can like,
butch you up.
That's not the words they use, but that's basically what happens. So there's this
channel like John Wayne, right?
They do. There's an extended scene where Armand is trying to coach Albert in like acting straight. And he says to walk like John Wayne, because who could be more masculine? And Nathan Lane does this amazing job to like walk like John Wayne, but it's not particularly masculine. Anyway, it's back and forth until, eventually they're having a conversation about football, the Dolphins. And Nathan Lane's Albert's like, was that bad? Was that the wrong reaction? And Williams's Armand is like, I actually don't know.
Because he say, how do you think I feel? Hurt, betrayed?
Yes. Betrayed, bewildered. Yeah.
Oh.
So, okay.
Comedic geniuses.
So they decide to try and like that Albert can pass as the uncle if there's actually a mom. And so they decide to actually reach out to the estranged mom, this woman with whom Armand had this one night stand 21 years ago, who has had zero input in his life. Like Val's never even met her. But Armand reaches out to her. She agrees to see him. He sees her at her office. She runs like a exercise company or something, like Archer Body Works. Her name is Catherine Archer. She's played by, what's her name?
Christine Baranski.
Her. Thank you. She does it beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to help. And she and Armand kind of like have some nostalgia and remember the show that they were in together because they were actors together. And there's some sexual tension between them. And Albert comes in and sees them like kind of sort of snuggling. Like it actually is pretty innocent on Armand's part, but it doesn't look it when Albert comes into the office. And so he storms off and leaves in the car and doesn't drive very well. So we get back to the apartment and Armand beats Albert back to the apartment because he's driving 20 miles an hour or whatever. And that's the moment when he does says the thing about take the cross, because the performers have hung a giant crucifix. It's like the only decoration in the entire room. And
doesn't he say he's taking his toothbrush with him to the cemetery? He's like, that's so Egyptian of you.
Yes. All of those things. Yes. Yes. So Albert leaves again. Agador, cries over him leaving. Please don't go. It's pretty sweet. Anyway, then we get actually one of the sweetest, and like really this scene holds up in many ways. Armand chases after him and catches up to him at a bus stop, and they have this very sweet conversation that's like still a little bickering because they're an old married couple who aren't married because they're not allowed to. And so they sign a palimony agreement, which I didn't even know what the heck that was. And so I had to look it up. But it's like a combination of the word pal and alimony. So it's a way to assure property ownership and probate for couples who can't or won't get married. So it basically assigned like half ownership of everything in both directions. So it was creating like the legal effects of marriage, since marriage was impossible for them. It's really sweet.
Well, and doesn't Armand say something like, you're the only one I want to spend time with, or something like that? Or after 20 years, I still want to be with you. I remember it something like that. Yeah.
When Albert was upset and like sort of storming out, he said like, people are laughing at me. And Armand says, you do make people laugh, and I'm still with you because you make me laugh. And I want to get in, he makes a comment about the cemetery, because Albert says he's leaving to go to Los Copos, which is all that's there is a cemetery. He's going to the cemetery. And so Armand says he has a plot in this great cemetery that's beautiful, and he has to sell that plot and get one in that shithole of Los Copos so that he doesn't miss a laugh, because he needs to be next to Albert. He also says, Albert says, well, who owns it now? The club. And Armand says, you do. What does it matter if you're letting me stay or if I'm letting you stay? Like it's home because you're there. It's really, really sweet. And it's like, it's a representation of a healthy, established gay couple. Long-term gay couple that we didn't really have in 96. So that moment is really important, and I wanted to lift that up. Okay. So fast forward, the Keeleys get there, and there's been this back and forth to try and figure out what to do to try and not out them immediately. Albert actually ends up putting on a form of drag when he's like in a masculine suit and trying to like pass, I guess.
And he has like maroon socks or something.
They're pink.
Pink.
Yeah.
And one does want to touch
of
color.
a hint of color. Yeah. And they all realize that he's even more obvious in this sort of male drag.
Mm-hmm.
And so Albert single-handedly comes up with the solution when he puts on drag and shows up as Mrs. Coleman, who the Keeleys were expecting. And then this dinner party, which is like most of the film, like the second half of the film is this very uncomfortable dinner party where actually Nathan Lane, Albert, as Mrs. Coleman in this like Barbara Bush wig and like pink conservative suit and pearls is like completely relaxed and at home. And Gene Hackman's Kevin Keeley is like totally smitten with her.
Yes.
I mean, complaining about the fact like, and Armand is very nervous and like uncomfortable because of this. And so Senator Keeley is convinced that he's, cheating on her. He compares Armand to Aristotle Onassis and like those Europeans, Anyway, Catherine, the actual birth mother, finally does show up. She was stuck in traffic for a long time. And that's when the sort of everything comes to a head, when the Keeleys are like, how many mothers does Val have? And finally, Val does the right thing and says only one, and it's Albert. And then meanwhile, the journalists, the paparazzi have they know that the senator is inside the club and are like camping out, like dozens of different TV vans.
Slathering hordes. Yeah.
Yeah. Are camping out to try and get an image of him as he leaves the club. And so to save him from journalists, the Goldmans dress all of the Keeleys as drag queens, including Senator Keeley. And they come out singing Sister Sledge's We Are Family and escape the club. And actually, Albert wears a suit in that scene. And then the very final scene is the big white dress wedding with a preacher and a rabbi officiating, and like the very clear like bride side with everybody in gray and black, and groom side with like pastels and different colors
and lots of drag queens.
Yeah.
One who thinks Bob Dole is gorgeous.
Right. Yes. And, from the bride side, somebody's like, which one is the mother? And the others are like, I just don't know. So, and then that's the end of the movie. So there's more in there. Hank Azaria as Agador, the houseboy, is like ridiculous and hilarious and also kind of offensive.
Yeah.
And there's like a few moments that like in part to make the Keeleys seem, reprehensible. Like at one point, Senator Keeley refers to Agador as a beige savage.
Oy.
Yeah. So like, it's not all sweetness and light, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
There are things that don't hold up. But let me just start and we can see where it goes. So I'll start with Bechdel, because we so often start with Bechdel. So the Bechdel test, as a reminder to our listeners, is the series of questions. Are there at least two named female characters? Do they talk to each other? Do they talk to each other about something other than a man? This film does not pass because though Mrs. Keeley, Louise Keeley, and Barbara Keeley talk to one another, they pretty much only talk about either Dad or Val.
And not even like wedding or like avoiding paparazzi or anything like that.
It's all in regards, maybe there is a line that would make it pass, but the conversations are about either Dad or Val.
Okay.
So I just want to get that out of the way. So that is the case. And also this film, which is like the protagonists ultimately are two gay men. Like it feels, it doesn't feel like misogyny, in my opinion, that it doesn't pass back out. So, I want to talk about race. Let's do that up front, since I just mentioned the beige savage thing. Hank Azaria, Sephardic Jew, I believe. Not, I don't think, Latinx. He's playing a Guatemalan with an accent, a Guatemalan man with an accent, and he says something like how his dad was the shaman of his tribe or something, which just, yeah, exactly. It does not feel good with 2024 eyes. It's also the case that I feel as though we're laughing at him. Like by the end, we're laughing with Albert, but I feel like we laugh at Agador through much of it. So that layered on top of his ethnic identity, the character's ethnic identity, just doesn't feel good.
Yeah. I remember because one of the things is he doesn't wear shoes ever. And so they make him put shoes on while the Keeleys are there and he keeps tripping.
Yes.
And like,
which is hilarious. Like the actual physical
comedy.
Hilarious.
Amazing. But I remember at the time being like, I don't know, like the assumptions made about someone who doesn't wear shoes.
It's just silly. I mean, I think it was just silly, but layered on top of all the other things.
Yes.
It doesn't sit well.
And then also in 2024, this is, completely different property, but Hank Azaria, that The Simpsons has stopped using his voice for Apu. I don't know if they no longer have that character at all.
Yeah, and he has done some public reflection on the harm that he did.
Because of there was a documentary put together by Hari Kantabalu, who is an Indian American who grew up having people mimic Apu at him.
Right.
And I truly believe that Hank Azaria did not mean any harm.
Sure.
That doesn't mean he didn't cause harm.
Intention and impact are very different things.
Yeah. He's very gifted mimic. He's got he can do like these amazing voices. He does so many voices for The Simpsons. So I can totally understand where it seems like I'm just putting on a funny voice without realizing what the impact is.
Right.
On people who might sound like him.
Right.
Or be assumed to sound like him.
Right. The other sort of almost throwaway, the very beginning, the first number that we see at the Birdcage is also Sister Sledge, We Are Family. And then we watch the performers come in and there's a quick change for one person that we see take off the drag for Sister Sledge and put on this new costume, which is like a big feathered headdress and then like a kind of a horse that they're riding, and it's the performers are wearing sort of drag versions of Native American garb, which is again like in 96 we let pass with we white people.
Yes,
we non-Indigenous people let pass without comment, and now it just yucky. It's inappropriate and offensive. It's just a moment. Like you barely, it's on screen for probably less than a minute. And I noted it. So that was another thing that I wanted to name. And then lastly, when thinking about race, the prostitute who was who was there when the other senator passed away, Senator Jackson. And she's played in this very sassy, stereotyped, like kind of like just totally reads into the stereotype of the hypersexualized young Black woman. It's very unfortunate. So it was shorthand for the hypocrisy of this hyper-conservative at the time. And it was a shortcut that perpetuated harm.
Yeah. Yeah. It reified the very conservative.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to like name that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to name that. Okay. So those were the things that I wanted to talk about race. So let's talk about the performance of gender. In 1996, I think this was like, I try to remember it in context.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember it in context. Especially because today, with the attention that drag has gotten in the past several years, like it's hard to remember,
Mm-hmm.
almost 30 years ago that it was a different sort of moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to hold that as well. The deeper conversations, the deeper questions and insights that this film is offering us about the fact that we are all performing gender is really, really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that I got it in the 90s.
Yeah.
The way that Williams, who is like, even Val thinks he's like closer to performing straight,
Mm-hmm.
is still performing, and the ways in which taking Nathan Lane's Albert, who is this over the top, like very effeminate, but fully himself,
Mm-hmm.
and then like having him kind of play with gender and the ways in which Albert is actually more relaxed in female drag,
Mm-hmm.
and is able to, I mean, he mocks Senator Keeley to his face without being recognized
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in that full drag, in ways that trying to perform maleness, he wouldn't be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what that speaks to about the way that like all gender is performed is really interesting to me. And I don't know that it was intentional, but not intentional, if you know what I mean. Like,
Absolutely.
I think the filmmakers were interested in talking about bias and hypocrisy and like the fact that, I mean, it's clear that Armand and Albert are the much more stable, happy, and loving couple of all three couples. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the kids are young, so we don't know yet, but of the Keeleys or these two, like obviously Albert and Armand are more loving.
Mm-hmm.
And we also hear about, like Val tells us that he's the only one in his frat who doesn't come from a broken home. And Catherine, the estranged mom, is between husbands right now, putting quotes around that. So in the whole film, they're the only kind of stable, long-term, healthy couple that we see. So I think that's what the movie makers were getting at.
Yeah. And even there's a ribbon of enjoyment in their bickering. Like,
oh
you
yeah,
get
yes,
it's
clear fondness for one another, even while they're bickering.
Yeah. Like you get the impression this is just what they like to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think that the movie makers were kind of after that. That's what they were after. Mm-hmm. In the process, they also did some interesting things about the performance of gender, which I don't know that we were ready to talk about in the 90s.
I'm sure we were not.
Well, for sure, you and I were not.
Yes.
I'm not sure that like mainstream culture,
mainstream American culture. Yeah.
I mean, and remarkably, they were ready to have to at least listen to the conversation about love, because this movie did much better than anyone anticipated it do. So it made like 200 million in international box office. It cost 31 to make. So it spent it was like a number one on the whatever for several weeks.
Is there any sense that there were people who didn't get that and were just laughing at the like very over the top performance of homosexuality?
I mean, how would I know?
Yeah.
Roger Ebert's contemporaneous review seemed to get it. You know, it talked about the love between these two and the fact that, you know, that really it's the conservative so-called family values folks who are being lampooned. Ebert got it. So I don't know. But I think that I find that really interesting. And I'm going to further problematize it and contextualize it by saying that it also, even in the sort of performance of gender, kind of fed into heteronormativity, right? And the idea that even among gay couples, there's like a man, I'm putting quotes around that, and a woman, right? And in some ways, the movie kind of lampoons that. And in some ways totally feeds into it, right? So in the very, very beginning, Albert is saying like, you don't take that tone with me so condescending, like you know everything because you're the man and I know nothing because I'm a woman. and Armand is like, you're not a woman. Which upsets Albert, of course. Yeah. So, and not in like a transphobic kind of way. I think Albert is in fact cis and also a drag performer. And also I'm going to admit that there's nuance in there that I'm not sure I understand. Yeah. So that heteronormativity of sort of saying, well, which one is the man in the relationship, which is kind of gross, is there. There's also the sense that like, and this, the more I think about it, the more this upsets me, particularly about Val, but just the movie in general, and that we accepted it. And, you know, I mean, it is where we were in the 90s, but the Keeleys came to them. This was the Goldmans' home where they were known, out, respected in their community. And yet it was the Goldmans who had to change in order to make the normal people, I'm putting quotes around the word normal, comfortable. And that's a form of heteronormativity that says the straight folks are the normal ones and you weirdos need to change to make them feel comfortable. In your own home. That makes me very uncomfortable. And that's, I think, too, part of what makes Val such a villain in my head now, right? Because this isn't Barbara, an outsider saying like, I'm sorry, but could you just please, because my dad's he's really hard to get along with. And could you, like, this is Val saying, Dad, if you love me, you'll pretend you're something you're not. And ouch. Yeah. Now, something interesting for me in seeing this, because I was 17 when it came out, and we've talked offline about this once or twice. I'm not going to say prior to this specifically, but this is the first time I remember seeing it and being aware of it. Was I had in my head an idea of what it meant to be gay, what a gay man was like. And that was in part because of the kind of lampooning that we would get in, you know, pop culture, in sitcoms and in things like that. And in part because of things like the Hays Code, which in older movies would not allow any explicit expression of homosexual love, desire, anything like that. And so there were these shortcuts created that became like winks. Yeah. That people knew that's what it was. And so having Robin Williams play Armand, who is, you know, in a long-term homosexual relationship that's very loving, that is basically a marriage, while still
adhering to what I think of as mostly heterosexual norms. I can remember like he wears like very masculine coded clothes, but he has these like trousers that are like loose fitting.
He wears like linen trousers, like
Yeah.
suits. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can remember that being the first time like, oh, I didn't know that could be a thing. Some of that is just having grown up in the 80s and 90s, not knowing anyone who was out, not getting any pop culture references that weren't like over the top. But I feel like in some ways that was helpful for me to recognize that what I think of is not what is the case. That they're and once I was thinking about it, I was like, well, of course not. Like everyone comes in all stripes. Mm-hmm. The thing that I find like tough about that is that it was the fact that he was more heteronormative and that he was the man, quote unquote, in that relationship. So it was packaging it in a way that made sense for me, who had been and for mainstream culture, that kind of opened my eyes while still reiterating this problematic way of looking at relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also something that, and this is another time when I need to put things in context. Like when we talked about Revenge of the Nerds, you noted that like actors didn't want to play gay characters on screen because it would hurt them. So in some ways, this is a step forward. Williams was a major talent. Mm-hmm. And in other ways, like now Lane is in fact gay, mm-hmm. though I don't think he was publicly out when this movie was made. And so the question of representation and the actor's identity matching that of the character they play, mm-hmm. and some of those key markers is one that this movie brings up for me. So I do think it's interesting, mm-hmm. as I noted in my intro, that Williams plays the sort of more subdued. In some ways, this is a very subdued performance for him.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
In line with some of his more dramatic roles that we've talked about, even, mm-hmm. as opposed to his more comedic ones where he had the capacity for such manic energy, just yes. over the top, that really doesn't show in this film. And in my research, I read that he actually had been considered for the Albert role and didn't want it because he was just coming off of Mrs. Doubtfire. So he didn't want to do another one in drag. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that was the right choice. Though Lane wasn't out, he is gay. And I think that Lane brought a level of nuance mm-hmm. to that performance and sort of gender expression and sexuality and all of the constellation that is, that I'm not sure if Williams could have done as well. Mm-hmm, so I think mm-hmm. it was the right choice. But I think that's interesting to note. And sort of looking back, like today, if a movie were made about a long-term couple, the club owner and the drag performer star, I would hope that both actors would be gay. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So
in some ways, this is I don't know if you've read the story about Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's vice presidential running mate. He was teaching in Minnesota when Matthew Shepard was murdered, and there was a request to create a gay-straight alliance at that high school, and he was the football coach. He married to a woman, and I can't remember if he was asked or if he volunteered, but either way, he realized, like, no, I'm the right person to do this because
he makes it safe. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. He makes it safe.
And so I'm Robin Williams playing this character in some ways feels like that kind of step. Whereas I'm not saying in 2024 it would be inappropriate for a straight teacher to run. I mean, it's called the Gay Straight Alliance. but, you know, you want them to partner with someone who has the lived experience that they can use to help the kids.
Right. Context matters, though, and the context surrounding it. Yeah. And so I think that's something that I just wanted to name, you know, with 2024 eyes. The other thing that some LGBTQ commentators that I read named in terms of context was that this was sort of the AIDS crisis was kind of plateauing. And so this was a moment, again, that now it gets mentioned in this movie, but it's just a mention. It's not at all central. And so we're sort of, if you're aware that in the periphery, these two men are survivors, right? They've survived this terrible moment in their community, and they have definitely lost people, right? And so, but that's not what it's about. And so one commentator that I read was saying that this was like reminded queer folks that it was okay to laugh. And that there was joy and fun in their identity and in their community, not just grief and sorrow.
You know, the other thing that brings up for me is I've seen queer folks from like our age talking about how they grew up without queer elders because they all died.
Right.
And so this gave the LGBTQ community elders, like fictional, but elders that they could look at with a lovely, beautiful relationship that is also hilarious. And joyful and complete and full. I mean, they have full lives. They have work, they have family, they have they have friends. They have a child. So that showing that there is something on the other side of middle age.
Yeah.
For a community that didn't get a lot of, for that 15-year period, just didn't have anyone to look up to because they all died.
Yeah. All right. The last thing I want to say, I meant to mention this when I talked about Val's villainy. Part of why he's so villainous, all the things I already said, and also he's asking them to do this so that he can get married, which his parents cannot.
Oh, gosh. I never even thought of that.
All the more. Like.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. He's a prick.
Oh, that's so ugly. This is a movie of its time. And I know it's based on the French,
it's based
show
on the French
and movie. La Cage aux
Folles.
Folles.
And then movie, La Cage aux Folles, exactly. And there's also a musical, actually. So it's been remade many, many times. I haven't seen any of those. I've only seen this Robin Williams, Nathan Lane movie. But in my reading, I read about that. So the play and the film, the French, are older from the 70s.
Yeah.
So pre-AIDS, or pre-AIDS crisis anyway.
So couple things I'm thinking, like this is a movie of its moment, because if you were to try to make it today, we would not accept Val. And we also would not accept Senator Keeley. Because he's mostly just kind of a buffoon, but he's not evil. Whereas someone who would have a problem with their daughter's boyfriend having two fathers, we would have.
I mean, he's not portrayed as evil, but he's evil.
True.
And I think but I think your point is well taken. We would not accept him because he's not just a buffoon. Like, as a senator, he's actually working to enact legislation that will hurt his daughter's fiance's parents, hurt them.
Yeah.
So this isn't just like he's ignorant and intolerant. The policies he is trying to enact will actively hurt them.
Yeah. And I feel like today's audience would be more aware of that and not be able to see him as a buffoon. So that's like because I'm thinking like, how could we redeem Val? And they try to at the end when he does the right thing, but it's like only when he's forced to.
It's too little too late.
Yeah. And it's like the jig is up.
The guy's a prick. The guy's
Yeah.
a prick.
But one thing that I think is interesting that I hadn't put this together. I knew that La Cage aux Folles was older. I hadn't put together that it was pre-AIDS crisis when it was written. And something you and I have talked about a couple of times is what happens when you write an entirely new story versus when you adapt a story that already exists. So we talked about this in like Roger Rabbit, where if we made the story about Dolores, so it could still be noir, but then we'd have it from the female point of view versus recasting it where Eddie is Edwina. And this is an example of what I'm talking about, where this was an existing property. In the existing property, the AIDS crisis was not something that people thought of when they thought of the gay experience, because it wasn't as at the time that it was written. So by updating it to the 1996, they basically wrote that out. Whereas if they had written a brand new story in 1996, even if they were trying to make it a comedy, that is in the heads of the writers, and they would have included that and included the heartbreak of that. Mm-hmm. And so like we've kind of gone back and forth over, like I've talked about how I would love to see James Bond cast as like Idris Elba. So make him, a black actor playing James Bond would be amazing. Cast a woman as James Bond would be amazing, because it does something different from writing an entirely new spy story with the intention of it being a black or a woman spy.
Right. Because
we come with our preconceived notions.
Right. Like when we talked about Blade Runner, if Ridley Scott had cast Sigourney Weaver as Deckard instead of Harrison Ford, the way that he did in Alien.
Yes, exactly. And so that's something, like, I think this is a really interesting example of that had not occurred to me. It's not that I was unaware of the AIDS epidemic or crisis or anything like that. It did not touch my life.
Right.
So it was background for me as a child in the 80s and 90s, but I never thought about the fact that La Cage aux Folles was from prior to that being the story of being gay.
Right. Okay. I'm going to try and reflect back. Like, we had a lot of thoughts that were not super cohesive, so we'll see if I can do this. But let me see if I can reflect back some of the key things that we talked about here. So we talked about gayness in this film and the way that in the 90s, this was a new thing to have this loving couple as the protagonists for a mainstream audience, and how they were neither kind of over the top caricatures of like Tu Wong Fu, nor was it Philadelphia, where it was just about what a horrible burden and trauma it is.
Trauma porn. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it actually gave the gay community of the 90s an opportunity to laugh again when they hadn't in a long time. Mm-hmm. We talked about gender in this film. So it doesn't, or if it passes Bechdel, it's just barely. And it also has very interesting things to say about gender, because there's a lot about the performance of gender, even when one is cisgender, and the ways in which we are performing at all times, which is really interesting. I don't think an intentional commentary on the point of our movie makers, and yet it's very much there when we see especially in the coaching that Armand is giving to Albert to try and help him to pass as straight. Speaking of passing as straight, we talked a lot about the heteronormativity that is overlain on this gay film. Mm-hmm. So there's the sort of heteronormative idea, this notion, which has caused a lot of it's my understanding, has caused a lot of trouble for gay couples in this question of like, which one is the man? Mm-hmm. As if even in same-sex couples, there's one person who takes on the male role and one person who takes on the female.
And I would like to say, like, we didn't mention it before, but the fact that Senator Keeley says, "How many mothers do you have?" And he says, "Just one. This is my mother, Albert." That's... It's
it's a little problematic. Like, I wish he had said, actually, I don't have a mother. I've got two fathers. Albert, this is Albert. And you are my dad.
And like, I get what they were going for. And I don't think that, like, it's one of those things where like, it's a yes and it's a both ends, because there's something wonderful and amazing about him claiming the maternal nurturing role for Albert. And I don't want to be one of those like essentialists, like men can't be mothers. It's just that it fits into this heteronormative script.
Well, in particular, because even within the film, like Albert referred to himself as Auntie Albert. And so I feel like even within the film itself, we could have had Val. Now, I don't know if the 90s they could have done it.
Yeah.
I feel like today we could have Val say something like, I don't have a mother. That's the woman who gave birth to me. This is my Auntie Albert who raised me.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yes. So heteronormativity is still marbled throughout this film, despite the fact that its protagonists are a same-sex couple. And one of the ways that shows up is what I named before, that we see the queer couple changing who they are, changing their apartment, changing everything about themselves to make the straight couple feel comfortable in the queer couple's home.
Yeah.
For the sake of this straight couple, for the sake of their straight son who is able to get married when they cannot. And he is a goddamn villain for that, for asking his dad to go back in the closet, for sending his Auntie Albert away because he's embarrassing. Fuck you, Val.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He is clearly not mature enough to get married.
Seriously. Race in this film is problematic. There aren't very many characters of color, but we do have Hank Azaria playing a Guatemalan man in a culturally insensitive way. We have the Native American costuming of like sort of drag versions for very briefly on screen, but in an offensive way. And we also have what was intended as shorthand to point to the Keeleys and the other conservative Republicans' hypocrisy, which ended up reiterating harmful stereotypes about over-sexualized young Black women in the form of the sassy prostitute who was present when Senator Jackson died. And then the very last thing that I wanted to just name is Robin Williams' role in this film as sort of, like you named, kind of fulfilling the role of that football coach who starts the Gay Straight Alliance at a high school after Matthew Shepard has died, as sort of the safe, solidly established masculine presence that makes it safe for the more marginalized folks to show up. So Williams played that role for his co-star, Nathan Lane, and also for a lot of the viewers. It's also interesting, we named that despite his kind of natural talent for big and bombastic performance, he plays this one pretty demure, pretty quiet.
And that actually, I think, speaks to his talent. I mean, because when he did do more dramatic roles, he did amazing job. And because he was capable of being so bombastic, it would be easy to pigeonhole him that way. But he didn't do that to himself. Yeah. And I'm going to tear up because I miss that man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that he made the right call. I mean,
yes.
I don't know if it was for these reasons. Like what I read said that he had just come off of Mrs. Doubtfire and he didn't want to do another role in drag. And I think that was the right call for many reasons, not least of which was part of what was funny about Doubtfire was that he wasn't being in drag was not a part of his gender identity. It was not a part of his sexual identity. It was a costume. And that's part of what was funny about Doubtfire. That is not Albert. Albert is not, it's not a costume when Albert dresses up as Starina. It is a manifestation of...
Starina is Albert. Albert is Starina. Yeah.
Yeah. And Lane, I think, was able to portray that in a way that maybe Williams could have. Maybe. I don't know. But for sure, Lane did and pulled it off. And I'm really glad that we have this.
Lane is another actor who is just a phenomenal talent.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Only Murders in the Building, but he has a small role in that where he's terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it. Yeah. Yeah, he's really good. He's really good. And the chemistry between them, when I watched it, it's funny because when I watched it a month or so ago, I was like, there isn't that much chemistry between them. But rewatching it now, a second rewatch, I realize it's not that there's not chemistry. It's that they're playing it as an old, comfortable married couple. So there's like sexual tension between Williams and what's
Lane.
her name? No.
Baranski.
There's like a sexual tension where it's clear she is attracted to him and he's like uncomfortable and also kind of likes it. And I don't get a lot of sexual chemistry between Lane and Williams, but they're meant to have been together for 20 years.
Yeah.
So
there's not much unresolved sexual tension once you've been together for 20 years.
And so watching it with that in mind, looking for that, there is physicality. They touch one another. It's comfortable, and that's actually appropriate for a couple who's been together for so long. They sold it. I really enjoyed it, and so I think that's another piece of the role model that you named, that so many folks from the queer community who are our age and around our age, sort of Gen Xers, like didn't have a whole lot of elders to look up to because the AIDS crisis was so devastating. And these two characters, at least in some way, served that role. Did I forget anything?
The only thing is, we talked about how La Cage aux Folles, that it was what it's based on, is older from prior to the AIDS epidemic decimating the queer community. And so that meant that the original that it was based on did not come in with preconceived notions about what it means to be gay, because it's tragic, which I think is a blessing. I think it's wonderful that we were able to create this hilariously funny film that made me laugh until my stomach hurt, that celebrates queer love and does not require the, like, here's the, 15 minutes of like, we got to talk about AIDS or the 15 minutes of like, man, we got to be sad right now, and just focus on the joy.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. Cool. Well, that was fun. Next week, I think you're going to bring me some deep thoughts.
Yes, I am bringing you my deep thoughts on Men in Black.
Oh.
Yes.
I love Men in Black.
The Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones film that I wish I could find it again, because I remember there being either a poster or a commercial or something, because, they're supposed to be nameless agents. And so where they go, Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. 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 My favorite line from that is, you know what the difference is between you and me? I make this look good.
Yes. And he does.
All right. Well, I'll look forward to that. See you soon.
See you soon.
Do you like stickers? Sure. We all do. If you head over to guygirlsmedia.com/sign up and share your address with us, we'll send you a sticker. It really is that easy. But don't wait. There's a limited quantity. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes. Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?